All right. Just go ahead and edit this real quick. All right, body file and just hang tight. All right. 1 second, get everything going on. What's going on? Just hang tight as I get started. This was kind of a last minute thing. I'll get rolling here. All right. Let me get the Instagram going. Hang tight for 1 sec. Set up. This so I can be positioned, right? So just give me 1 second and I'll get stuff running here. Last minute thing, I know I haven't been on the YouTube in a minute and I don't have time to do it this weekend. You know, a lot going on now that the conference is over and we're trying to get back to a semi-regular schedule. So I figured let me just pop on here real quick for an hour or so. I'll run through a few things. Hold on. Turn this around. Yeah, you know, I ain't gonna do the Instagram thing. Let me just go ahead and do this. I'm not gonna bother with it. I'm doing this from a different computer. I ain't gonna waste my time. We'll do that another time. All right. So, all right. So, I don't know how many people will pop in because it's kind of a last minute thing. But before I begin, let me just run through some quick announcements. Hold on a second. First and foremost, what I'm going to begin with after the announcements, going to do a quick recap of the conference. So I see we got my van, Tamika Hill. What's going on? They were actually there. Before we get through that, just a couple of quick announcements. If you're on the Patreon page, I made a mistake in a date for the African witchcraft, the date and time, the next African witchcraft and sorcery class, which is class number 4. I did fix the date. That'll be Wednesday, November 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I did send a notification out and a message to cover both ends. You should have received a direct message and a notification of the updated post. So if you are a Patreon member, I want to make sure that you please make a note of that. There was an error on my part as I was going through the Patreon page today, updating it. I noticed that the date and the time was wrong. So I did go ahead and fix that. So please, you should have, if you haven't yet, because you've been busy and you haven't read that notification. If you see a notification from the Primordial Chaos page, please make sure you make a note of that new date and time. All right, so we have that coming up on the 10th. Let me run through. And just to remind people, after November, the month of December, we will be taking a break because, as I said, this is a time of the year where we rest. And I say rest in the sense of focusing really on ourselves. So yes, the next class after that is that same week, which is Saturday, November 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the Ancient Egyptian Vampirism class. I believe that's number 3. And that's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, November 13th. And then we finish up the month on Friday, November 19th for Harmonization Ritual of Ma'at. That's for Patreon members only. If you're interested in the other classes, it's all posted on the social media platforms, Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos on Facebook. If you want to sign up for individually for them classes, the classes are $56. They could be paid by PayPal or Cash App. Or you can go to the Patreon page. It's actually cheaper to be a tier 3 Patreon member, which gives you access to all the classes and the rituals. Patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. That's patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. .com, patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. There's also mentorship programs on there. There's the Red Magus mentorship program, as I said before, that takes time, energy, and work to put in. So if you sign up for any of the mentorship tiers, please make sure you do have ample time to commit to those tiers. My opinion, if you don't sign up for a mentorship tier, tier 3 is the best tier, which is $25 a month. And that gives you full access to the classes and the rituals. Or if that's neither one of your interests, you can sign up individually for the classes per class of whatever you like. It's a bit more money that way. So it's actually cheaper to just be a Patreon member. I set it up like that way to encourage people to go that route. It's just easier to be subscribed, and that links you into all the classes that we do. Also, don't forget to check out the Primordial Chaos podcast. Didn't post any material last week due to the fact of the 4th annual Journey of the Black Adept conference. That kept me, obviously, all of us busy. I try to post at least one podcast episode a week, so I'll try to get back to that this week as I continue to put content on there. Also, if you are interested in a spiritual consultation or a spiritual reading, a reading with Santa Muerte and the spirits of the dead, a shadow work reading, which, as I've said, people who always want to know what direction should they be going in, what's a good place to start, where should I be headed, what should I be doing? Those are common questions that come up all the time, okay? Well, that's a good place to start, a shadow work reading. Hold on one sec, sorry. That is a great place. I'm trying to do a couple of things simultaneously, so bear with me. But that is a great place to start if you need guidance, direction. Hold on. All right, so yeah, because the shadow work readings help specifically identify areas that you need to address, right? Ritual work should be geared towards specific things that are very important or current to you at the moment that need to be worked on, that need to be mastered. Without foundational shadow work and without addressing the shadow self, usually you don't have consistent results in your ritual work. So that's a great place to start. Also offer various different clepothic demonic readings. Again, you can reach out to me and I can send you a list of the type of readings and consultations that I offer. Deity readings, which a lot of you have reached out to me for those, to help you understand the type of deities or energies that walk with you and influence your life. Not to worship them, not to get spooky as hell, because I know some motherfuckers will get spooky as hell. But it's to help and assist you understand who and what you are, and it'll help assist you in your approach. And again, I think the key is having an understanding to know what direction you need to be heading in, what you should be doing, what kind of ritual work that you should be designing for the moment of things that's going on in your life. Very important. All right. Egyptian oracle readings, and there's a few others. You can send me an email at khnum19@gmail.com, and I can send you the information on those classes, readings, whatever it is you're looking for. Reach out to me. All right. So having gotten through that, also the Hip Hop Occult Show returns this Friday night. Tune in for that. We got a good show planned. That'll be live streamed on the Primordial Facebook page, not here on YouTube, due to the fact we play live music, and obviously you know the game with YouTube. They be giving you a hard ass time if you play any damn music. So we do it there so we could have a little more liberty and freedom to play music. So since we have now completed this year's conference, as right after I put out the date for next year, as I said, it's the same time every year. It's the last weekend in October. So next year it's going to be October 28th to the 30th, 2022, 5th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference, October 28th to the 30th. Mark it down on your calendars. It's always that last weekend in October. So hopefully we see some new people also next year, in addition to the many new people we saw this year, and some that returned from previous years. So I want to start with that real quick recap of the weekend, just brief recap. I don't record any of it, and there's a reason why. People have asked. I don't record any of it. I don't upload it. I don't offer it on any platform, including the Patreon, and I'm going to explain why. Okay. Some things, in my opinion, this is just how I've done special events like this, just so you understand, it's a personal thing. I think some things need to stay very personal on a certain level, and the conference is one of those things, especially the ritual work. Now the stuff we do on Patreon is geared, it's more open on a group level. I mean, any of it can be, but because we have a couple of days of special events, I keep those moments very personal, and where they're recorded and archived is in your mind. There's special moments that you can go back and access in your subconscious mind and your memory. So I keep it very personal. I keep it very discreet, and I did offer the classes and the workshops where people were able to sign up virtually online. And again, I want to give a shout out and a thanks for everybody that attended virtually, and a special shout out and thanks for everybody that came in person and live. So I do offer the classes and workshops virtually, but not the rituals, because I really keep the rituals that weekend very personal, and keep it within that group of people that's there, because it's one of those, again, it's one of those experiences that you want to keep archived in your memory, and you're able to access that when you see fit. Okay. So, and that process will continue. So it's just one of them kind of things where you need to be there in some shape, form, or fashion, if you know what I mean. It's one of them type of things. You need to be there. It's a special event. It's not something we want to really minimize and dumb down and make it accessible. It's something you need to really experience on a personal level. All right. So to recap, just a quick recap, and to give you guys an idea, an outline, just a brief summarization and outline of what to expect if maybe you're thinking about attending in future conferences, which I would highly recommend. One, it's just a great time for us to get together, because a lot of us who are on this path. One thing, this was one of the motivations of designing the conference, because I know in some areas I get a lot of feedback where a lot of you guys are in areas where you don't have a lot of people that you can dialogue and build with that are on this path, because it's not the most common path, right? It's a path that if you're not in an area where there's people, you may not be able to have a lot of people to fellowship with, build with, talk with, etc. Right? So that was one of the main motivations a little over 4 years ago of putting this together, an annual event where we can come together from different places, states, whatever, and we can get together and meet each other, dialogue, perform rituals as a group, and have different classes and workshops. That was the whole point of doing it, and will be the whole point of continuously to do this, right? So this year we had a new venue, which was worked out a lot better than previous years, because we wanted to make sure, we wanted to make things very convenient, keep everything in a very isolated and connected area where people who come have access and are just minutes away, whether it's exploring the sites. We always get a locale very close to the beach, because a lot of people that come usually come from areas where they may not have access to a full saltwater fresh beach. And we keep it right in the heightened area of downtown, where you can, again, have access to whatever it is you're trying to get to without having to go very far. So what we did on the first night, we had a meet and greet on a Thursday night, October 28th. We met at a place called Twin Peaks. Not all, but most people made it, because people on that first night had different flights and times they were coming in, but majority of the people made it. So we just basically had a nice little sit down, a little meal. Everybody introduced themselves to each other, and basically we just socialized for a little bit, and it was cool. We stayed for a couple hours. We had a brief short meeting afterwards, and kind of talked about what we were going to do and how to get prepared for Friday, the first day of events. So we all gathered Friday at the venue that we were using for the conference, which was Cultural Expressions in Hollywood, Florida. Shout out to Sister Sophia and Brother John, who gave me the opportunity to rent their facility out for 3 entire days. I've done some work down there in the past, and they're always great hosts. They're very easy to work with. And more than likely, that is where we will do our conference next year, unless it grows out of control where we need more space. But shout out to Brother John and Sister Sophia for their accommodations this past weekend. We started 9 a.m. We covered, we did a whole workshop. We started out with meditation and breathing, the importance of it. I'm not going to get into all the details. As I said before, those are foundational techniques that I have found. And that was one of a lot of the workshops and classes we did was centered around a lot of the things that have come up in the last year. And one of the things we did more, group participation things, because one of the things I have found out that comes up a lot, people struggling with some of the foundational techniques for whatever reason. So we wanted to focus on some of that stuff. So meditation and breathing was discussed in depth. We did some exercises and demonstrations together as a group. References were given out to materials to refer to. And I basically went over 4 to 5 of the key proper breathing exercises and techniques that people can incorporate in their daily work. So that was very key and important. We addressed meditation and concentration, which was very important. We also discussed, we had a whole presentation on the alchemical and cult aspect of Baphomet, how that's connected to your work, the do's and the don'ts, and it went into in depth to other things. We also had a presentation on the importance of planning your ritual work correctly. We focused on intent, how to set your work up, how to make sure it's in line, it's going in the right direction, etc. And that's all important too. And again, these are a lot of things that have come up a lot where people tend to be struggling with. So we did work on that. Then we came back and convened later in the evening, and we did a New Year's sabbatical rite, where it focused, it was a ritual that we all did as a group. It was focused, again, this is the time of the year. I mentioned this, might have mentioned it in the last video, I can't remember, but let me mention it again. This is the time of year as we are in that autumn equinox, in the beginning stages of what they refer to as darkness, heading into the darkest point of the year, which most paths look at as something negative, stagnation and growth. I mean, stagnation and stasis, which it is. But it depends on how you look at that stagnation and stasis. Okay. So as we approach the beginning stages of darkness, and this ends our cycle year on the path of the occult as we prepare, get ready to go into the new year. And December, obviously, when we get into that winter equinox, that period of darkness is when each individual is supposed to really internally reflect and look at themselves, examine themselves. The rite and the ritual was geared towards reflecting on this past year, 2021. What did you accomplish and what did you fail at? Okay, it's taking a real good look at yourself. And then after you have made those conclusions, then it's about focusing on what is your goals and what are you trying to accomplish for this upcoming cycle or year in 2022. So that's what the ritual was based on. We connected with the different aspects of the gods of the void and the abyss, whether Lucifer and Lilith obviously being at the head of that ritual, followed by Arachne. Abaddon was included in that working. Different masks of Lucifer, such as the Emperor of Hell, the Light Bearer. So there was different mask aspect of Lucifer. We connected with Arachne, one of the goddesses of the void and the abyss and the underworld, and connected it all with a specific rite for transformation, growth, and change, focused on our goals, our successes, and our failures, and how to improve on them, right? So that's what the sabbatical rite, that's what this time of the year is about. And it's going to lead into the topic of the video that you see. And this is why the conference is done at the end of October, right around the Sabbath, which some call All Hallows Day or Halloween, which leads up to the Day of the Dead, right? So there's a reason why I choose that time, and the reason why I do it, because for us as occultists, Black magicians, necromancers, working the path of the occult, this is a super high time of the year, which as we approach and connect with this Luciferian energy of Lucifer, when we get into the month of December, if you practice Luciferian magic, witchcraft, and sorcery, we know December 25th is a high time of the year. Why? What does that symbolize? That is the day on the Gregorian calendar, right? Which we use to a degree here in the West, which is the day of the year that has the shortest amount of daylight hours, which is also, by the way, where the Catholic Church and Christianity came up with the date of the birth of Christ. It's fictional because they say that being the shortest day on the calendar year with daylight hours. So let's choose that date because Christ represents the light and the darkness. Very nice, very cozy, very convenient, but it's just unfortunately not a reality. All you have to do is the basic research to find out. When you look in the Gospel of Luke, it says in the Hebraic calendar that the angel Gabriel came to this character Mary in the 6th month. Well, when you look at the Hebrew calendar and you look at the 6th month and then add 9 months to it, you actually get the month of June, right? And there are some scholars that actually say he was born in the month of June, but really it's neither here or there. I couldn't really care. It's irrelevant. It's just the December 25th day has nothing to do. It's just, you got to remember when you're studying original Christianity, which the father of all Christianity and mother of all Christianity is Catholicism. Remember, every other sect of Christianity here in the West emerged from that. And remember, it's incorporated with a lot of Roman and pagan beliefs, pagan traditions and holidays infused and incorporated in what we know as modern day Christianity, right? So that's the significance of that winter solstice. But as Luciferian practitioners, there are a lot of Luciferian initiatory and transformational rites performed on that day. I've given people over the years, last couple of years, I've sent to them a rite. It's almost like a baptismal renewal rite that you can do on that day. And again, it's a high spiritual time for us. So while everybody is in hiding and saying that it's cold, it's darkness, it's stagnation, they're right. But in stasis and stagnation, there's growth. Because when you can look at stagnation as not being productive, which it can be if you're just completely lazy, not doing nothing. We look at stagnation and stasis as a time to, we're still, it's a time to reflect. And I talked a little bit about this in the conference this past few days. In that stasis and stagnation is where you do that examination of yourself. And we never take the time to sit in silence and darkness, okay, to really reflect on our life, right? We never take that time to really block out all the external distractions and thoughts. And we were going over that in a conference, and I was explaining to people, sometimes just sit in silence and darkness and do nothing. No candles, no music, no incense, no TV, none of that. Just silence and darkness. For some who don't do this regularly, it's going to be a struggle at first because the mind is going to get distracted, right? It's going to be hard to focus. You're going to start having just, distracted thoughts. Just foolish shit will come into your mind. But once you're able to relax and clear your mind and block that out, you will be able to decipher between things that are important and things maybe you're spending way too much time on. And this is how you gather your thoughts. This is how they say in spirituality, you examine your conscience. And this is how, through the clarity of those thoughts, you're able now to kind of move forward and devise plans and techniques of how you're going to go about working on your path spiritually, right? So this is how we look at this time of the year, right? It's a serious inner spiritual reflection as we emerge from the darkness into the light. And as we know, everything emerged from the primordial chaos, the void and the abyss, even the biblical God. And they can't get around that and deny it because it's right there in their book, right? Because if God said, let there be light in the book of Genesis, it's confirmation he existed in darkness before he said, let there be light. So what is darkness? Is it something negative or bad? Well, it can be if it's explained from a very ignorant, religious, philosophical perspective, from closed-minded individuals who are blinded by the ignorance of faith and belief, most definitely. And those that know no better can absorb it as something being what they label as evil, right? And if you spell evil in reverse, it means to live. So there's two ways you can look at that, right? And a lot of it has to do with the way people perceive things, how they're influenced, what are their personal and religious and spiritual beliefs. That's going to influence a lot of people's perspective on how they see things, and that's fine. But also those people have to understand, just like I understand, not everybody's going to agree with what we talk about here on the channel, and that'd be foolish to think. But at the same token, I don't give two shits. That's irrelevant to me. I'm not worried about that. Each individual has to come to their own conclusion of their understanding. And people have to also understand if what you hear when it comes to knowledge and information and spirituality, if it's not in alignment with your personal understanding, you're just going to have to understand that's the way life is. That not everybody's going to be in agreement, and we have to learn to agree to disagree, and that's fine. But don't get upset when people don't see it your way, because that's when ignorance kicks in and foolishness kicks in, and then people's feelings get hurt because they think they know it alls and they want to strike up a debate, and then their feelings get hurt even more, and then their feelings get crushed. So this is a path of liberation and sovereignty. And if you're not open, you will be challenged, especially if you're a newer person. A lot of the things, if you come on this path at an older age, and a lot of the things you might have been doing for years are going to be put into question. A lot of the things that you thought were truth are going to be challenged. Because as I've said many times before, truth is very personal. There's a mistake when you have spiritual paths make the false claim that they have the undiluted, supreme 100% incorruptible truth. Well, that's the first lie that they said, because truth is very personal. You have to raise yourself up to the realization of it. Until you confirm something as a reality, that's when it becomes a truth. When you're just going along the path of faith and belief, you have hope based on that faith that that truth is real. You don't really know. And that's a hard pill for some people to swallow. Okay, it's just like the concept of death, which is going to lead us into our topic. Day of the Dead, Santa Muerte, your ancestors. We recap the conference, but just look at this whole concept that most religions claim they know what's going to happen to you when you die. And that's a bunch of bullshit, straight up bullshit. There's no path. I'm not talking about theories. I'm not talking about Yes, there's ancient text out there like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or really the Coming Forth by Day, etc. I'm not saying there's not books out there, texts that allude, theories, even some scientifical theories, okay? But the bottom line is, and it's probably one of the motivational factors why a lot of people are on any path to spirituality, whether you're religious, spiritual, whatever you want to call yourself. One of those burning desires and motivational factors that you seek knowledge for and understanding on these spiritual paths is to understand the mysteries of life and, most importantly, death. What happens to me when I die? Where do I go? Or we ask the questions, how did I get here? What's my purpose here, right? These are all key questions that have motivated us in some shape, form, or fashion to study spirituality. Let's be real with ourselves. But to the point of what exactly happens to you at the time of death, nobody really knows, okay? And anybody that says otherwise is full of shit, okay? Straight full of shit. I'm not asking you a theory. Unless you died and came back to life, which there are people who have claimed to have quote unquote near-death experiences. Some of it I question because I always see this similarity in stories. And again, it's hard to decipher sometimes between the illusionary aspect of reality and reality. That's a whole nother story but my whole point is the actual process. This is why we study, because if we knew that and had the clear-cut answer to that, I don't think a lot of people would even spend half of the time and energy doing what they do, okay? So we don't know. That is one of the main components of why we study, what we do know is how to understand what death is and what death is not. And that's why this weekend and the conference and this time of the year is critical in that understanding. So it starts by educating yourself and removing the ignorance and fear of what death is and death is not. Because religions use this as the key motivational factor to keep people controlled, to keep people bringing donations into the church, to keep putting the Rolex and the gas and the car payment of the caddy and the other fine cars that Pastor Porkchop and Pastor Reverend keep driving around off the backs of hard-earned money of people who don't really got it. Fear of death, fear of being in line, do what you're told, follow the rules, follow the regulations, and then don't worry about it. You'll go to this place called heaven and everything will be fine, pie in the sky. But meanwhile, the Reverend, the pastor, the imam, the sheikh, they have their heaven here on earth. They're driving around in luxurious cars, fine clothing, eating at the finest restaurants, while the congregation is going to Walmart with an EB&T card, just struggling to make ends meet so they could give Pastor Porkchop 10% of their earnings. See the game? So they're not waiting for theirs in the afterlife. They're getting theirs now off the back of the hard-earned money of the congregation. Why? Because of fear of death, right? Death is the #1 tool of fear that's used in religion to keep people in line. It's fact. So step 1 is to educate yourself, prepare yourself, remove the fear of death. So as we grow closer to that transition, and that's one thing that's guaranteed. We all gonna experience it. That's a guarantee. But when you are working with the death current, which really, as I said before, represents eternal light, because as I said before, people that understand what death is have a greater appreciation for life. They see it in a totally different light. Because as I said before, what we're calling the realm of the dead, that's false. It's the realm of the living. It's the spiritual realm. It's the realm of eternal life. This is the realm of the dead, okay? You got it backwards. Because the moment you proceeded from the womb of your mother, you started to die. Think about it. You get older. As you get older in age, the body starts to wear down and break. You start to get ill. Old age creeps in and you die. From whence you came is whence you return, right? So that was eternal life in the womb of your mother. That was eternal light in that energy, gas, or etheric existence before you went from gas into a liquid, which was 9 months in the womb of your mother, and then were birthed physically into this world. You begin to die, not live. Your journey is to get back to where you came. There's many theories on why we're here. which opens the door to other thoughts. Some say we chose to come here. I do believe that to a degree. Because ask yourself this question, if you knew that this was what this realm, this planet, this earth was like, and this existence was like, and with all this shit that's going on, would you want to voluntarily come here now? Ask yourself that question. Knowing what you know and what you see now, if you knew this was the bullshit that you were going to be dealing with, would you really have wanted to come here? So now we need in our spiritual work to uncover what is our purpose? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing while we're here? And most importantly, where are we going when we leave here? Right? Religion claims they know. They've created this fictitious mythology called heaven if you're good and hell if you're bad, and can't prove that it even exists. Okay? They take the Greek word haven, which is a place of hiding or enclosure, or where ships dock, because they use the Greek terminology, and they give you this false concept of pie in the sky. And they take the Greek word Hades, which is below, which they get the term hell. And then if you're bad, there's this little character on the hot sauce bottle with a pitchfork and horns, and he's just going to torture you for eternity. The Catholics even went another step and created this in-between limbo abode called purgatory. They took it to a whole nother level, where you can go there and burn out all your sins, and then you get the bus pass or the transfer to heaven, where St. Peter will be at the pearly gates to open the door and let you in. See, it's fucking spookism and mythology. I've always asked the question, it's going to be a long-ass line in heaven, because there's tons of sects of Christianity. And I don't recall Jesus referring to himself as any of them. So it's going to be a line for Catholics, Pentecostals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Protestants. Which one? Who's got the truth? They all claim to follow the same prophet, Jesus, but they all can't agree exactly on how to follow that prophet. This one don't believe in the Pope. This one doesn't really accept the full blessed, the assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Immaculate Conception and all that. There's all these differences of dogma and doctrine, more confusion, okay? So there's gonna be a long ass line, but when I look in the Bible, Jesus never referred to himself as any of them things. This was what man did long after he was gone. And the term Christianity, by the way, was used as an insult. All you got to do is go into Acts 26. That's the only time you find the word Christian in the Bible. And it was when disciples were in Syria, and the people used it as a mockery term. They called them the Christians, or followers of Christ, the Christos, right? In a mocking way. Jesus never referred to himself as any of those things. He made it clear in the Bible, beware those who come in my name saying that I am Christ. People will say, oh, that's referring to people who come and say they're Christ. No, go back and read the text again. He's saying, beware of people who come saying that he is Christ, that I am Christ, because he knew that would be a term for the false Messiah. And this is why, after with Paul's teachings, I don't want to get into the whole Bible thing because shit bores me, because I could break that down in 5 minutes and shit all over it. It's a waste of time. But when you look in there, he made it clear. Do not go unto the Gentiles, but go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which was Judah only. Where does this concept come that Jesus came to save the whole world? That comes with the teachings in the books of Paul later, according to Paul's contradictory vision on the road to Damascus, which he gives 3 different accounts that contradict each other, where he claims Jesus said to go to the Gentiles. It's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Take the esoterical occult Bible study class. We go over all that stuff in there. That's what it's geared for. I don't want to waste too much time on it. He said, go to Judah only, right? You find that in Matthew chapter 5. Who is Judah? Second book of Kings, chapter 17, verses 18 and 19. All of Israel was removed out of the sight of the Lord at that time, except for one tribe, Judah, who would bear root upward later. The lost tribe of Judah, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's who he was sent to, people. Go back and read your books, okay? All you got to do is go back and read it. But that's, again, the whole point is we have to remove this fear and ignorance of what death is, okay? To understand what it's not. And to know it's not as terrifying and negative and as evil as people make it seem. Now, I want to make this clear. Again, as I said earlier, most people who really work with the death current have a great appreciation for life, because now they understand, and life is precious. Your time here should be utilized in the most important ways. You're supposed to leave your impact here, your legacy. If any of us went tomorrow, the next day, next week, 3 months from now, do you feel like you've left an impact and a legacy here? And you've left a lasting effect long after you're gone? And have you prepared yourself for that spiritual journey or transition? These are people that now appreciate every moment of life. That's what connecting with the death current is. It's not just about working with skulls and rituals and necromancy and dark robes and all that. That's a very small part of it. Okay? And I want to make that clear. So understanding death is not about speeding up the death process. Because one of the greatest things you'll find with these spirits, and you need to come to the realization of it, suicide is one of the most greatest travesties you could do to yourself. Okay? That is a no-no in the spiritual world. And I'm saying you need to come to that realization yourself. It's no written law. And it's not to minimize people who suffer from depression and suicidal thoughts, because that's a real disease. And it's not knock or judgmental on them, because some of them don't have control over it because they're not in their right frame of mind or thought. So it's not belittling that. I'm talking about on the surface for nobody to ever get the understanding, because I've had people over the years to reach out to me, and this is crazy, but I think I mentioned this before in the past. People send me emails that they're working with this spirit and connecting with this spirit, and the spirit revealed to them a ritual of suicide. My response is, ain't no energy I work with, ain't no spirits I work with that's going to ever influence or try to get you to commit suicide. You're tapping into something else. And you could be confusing it for that, because when you're not spiritually grounded and centered, you can open yourself up. Your crown chakra can be opened up when your countenance is low and you're giving up such a low vibrational frequency. You can be ripe for what they call walk-ins and possessions. And when you have certain devouring spirits and energies that are out there, and you are not a strong-minded individual to embrace that incarnation, they can take the host, and they can take host inside of you. We talked a little bit about spirit possession in the conference. How do you know? People always ask, well, how do you know you're possessed by an unwanted host that you have no control over, right? How do you know? Very simple. Evaluate your character, okay? If you're doing things that are very out of character, nature, that you never do, that's sign one. If you find yourself not in control of your emotions, your anger, or you're doing risky things that are very dangerous, or you become very disruptive, violent, or it's starting to affect every aspect of your life, of things you do, your character, and you stop and go, man, you're mystified. I don't know why I did something like that. Why am I doing that? That's not me. Things of that nature. It's very easy. You're out of character. You're doing things that you never normally do. All right. This is how you can tell you might be affected by a spirit that has taken host in you that you don't have control over. And if you can recognize it, of course, there's things you can do to get that spirit in line. Because what people fail to realize this path is about, very important, these spirits are looking for individuals to connect with that walk side by side with in the knowledge and intelligence. And if you show that you're weak, or you show you're inferior, you are connecting with certain spirits that are devouring in nature. And once they see you are weak, that type of stuff can happen. And it can be avoided by doing your due diligence. It can be avoided by centering and focusing your work on the needs in your life, not the wants, right? We talked about that at the conference, right? People struggle with working on their wants and confusing them for needs. The correct way to do shadow work is focus on what's absolutely necessary out the gate. The wants will come as long as the needs are addressed. It's not reverse, people. Trust me when I tell you, you're going to have a hard time if you think it's reverse. And I see this mistake made over and over again. And you don't want to make that mistake. So, as we know, before I forget, and I'll go back, Day of the Dead, which was yesterday. This is a great time of the year, but you should be doing ancestral work consistently. And I say ancestral veneration and acknowledgement, not ancestral worship. We don't do that shit. Okay, we don't worship our ancestors. They are you, you are them. The same blood that runs through your veins runs through their veins. You can't worship them. You venerate and honor them to make that spiritual connection where you can communicate with them. They now can be used as vessels of guidance. You can sit down, communicate with your ancestors, get answers to questions you need, and use them as a guide and a source to assist you on your spiritual path. It's that simple. All right. I've always said, in my opinion, that ancestral work is a key foundational practice on this path. And once you have established a consistent relationship and communication with your bloodline ancestors and your spiritual ancestors, which are two different things, because some of us have spirits that walk with them and that are ancestral and genealogy. Once you have an understanding of this through your work, it is another powerful vessel and tool that connects you to your spirits, right? So you should, especially this week, Day of the Dead yesterday, is a great time to design a ritual or work to honor your ancestors, because that current is in the air. It's a high time of the year here in the West. Because remember, when you take a day that's established where there are practitioners all across the world doing similar work and tapping into that same current and energy, that's what makes it so powerful. You can tap into some of that energy if you know what you're doing and make that energy very personal, right? A key component also I add to this, and right before I got on, I just did some work with Santa Muerte. I'll talk a little bit about Santa Muerte, because she is connected strongly with the Day of the Dead in this time of the year. And as I said, now for many years, going back, originally back in the early to mid 90s, then off of it for a while, and now back on it heavy for the last 7 to 8 years. I have a very close and personal relationship with that spirit, especially the gold aspect. Okay. This is a great time to design ritual work for Santa Muerte, which, I mean, any time is, don't get me wrong. This is a great time to establish work with all 7 of her aspects. And even if you individually connect with those specific aspects for specific reasons, because there's a lot of this time of the year is centered around Santa Muerte, right? Because she is one of those matriarchal patroness spirits here in the West that is referenced to connecting you to the realm of the dead or the spirits of the dead. And there's a connection with that with your ancestors. Though we know Santa Muerte likes to have her own individual things, you can connect with the Black aspect and aspects of her to connect you with your spirits. There is a connection with that there. When I've set up or have set up, or my altar is set up like that now, when you have, say, a room or a chamber where you have different altars set up, I always keep, obviously, my Santa Muerte altar separate by itself. I don't put anything else on there from other systems or paths, but I keep it right next, it's right after my ancestral altar. To me, that's the best way if you're going to share rooms with different altars, which most people have to do. Even though I have a large area set off for ritual and altar work, but what gets to a point where you have so much stuff, how do you group it together? People always ask, how should I group these things together? You know, some people get a little spooky. Should I put this with that, that with this? And there's a simple rule of thumb to remember with that. That's not really that complex, right? And that rule of thumb is real simple. Group the same energies together. Keep like-minded energies together. I'm big on keeping different pantheons by themselves. And for an example, like I said, I have a whole Egyptian Heka altar, which is just working with the ancient Egyptian deities. I don't really put anything else on there. I have a black magic altar that I use just for occult ritual work that connects with all of those archetypes, Lucifer, Lilith, etc. I have an ancestral altar, which just connects with ancestral bloodline spirits and spiritual ancestors. I have a Voodoo altar and then the Santa Muerte altar. I find you can keep them if you have a chamber room or a ritual room or a spare room that you've designed to do ritual work. You can keep them together in the same room, but I find their altars should be exclusively for those pantheons. That's just my opinion. There's some people, I know they just mix everything together, and you can do it. There's no rule of thumb. You can do whatever you want, right? That's life. I'm going to tell you, when you look at the overall results and talking to people, and long term, you'll find it's more effective if you group the pantheons where they need to be grouped. All right. I find that works the most effective, but I'm very big in your ancestral altar. Excuse me. You should never do any other work on there but with your ancestors. That's just rule of thumb, because that basically is specifically for bloodline work. Because I get emails all the time where people will ask questions like, can I do this ritual on my ancestral altar? If it's not geared for your ancestors, the answer is no, you should not. Okay. Don't mix any other demons, spirits, gods, or goddesses with Santa Muerte. In my opinion, that's a no-no. Santa Muerte is a very attention-craving spirit. She is like a young woman. She can get very jealous if you intermix certain energies with her. And I found over the years, she does not like it. She wants her full attention, her stuff, and only her stuff. No different than a young female who, that's just how young females are. It's not being stereotypical. We know how certain women like to be pampered, like to be treated, like to be put up on that pedestal. That's Santa Muerte. And if you don't give her that approach, I find you don't get the best results. And she can make things happen to get your attention. So the way I teach people and what I recommend, and again, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying what I'm saying is tell all be all. Because if you're a person that sees this after it records, or you might be watching now and go, oh, that's not true, I've done this or that, power to you. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm going to tell you there is way more people who will tell you the approach that I just explained is way more effective than probably the minimum amount of people who do the mixing. I've had this many times over the years where maybe a practitioner started out working with Santa Muerte and wasn't fully, and not their fault. They just didn't have the knowledge. And I found they set up altars and mixed other stuff with it. I can't tell you how many times this has happened over the years. And then they just call me and they'll say, oh, crazy stuff going on. I don't feel right. There's disruptions going on in my life. I tend to seem like I'm getting in a lot of arguments with people, shit going on in business or the job, or might have got into an accident, or feel like I'm gonna get into an accident as I'm out on the road. They even describe physical defects. I feel like I got headaches all the time. I don't feel right, etc. And then in that talking and discussing, when I ask them, and we're talking, and this comes up in spiritual consultations, and I say, what kind of altars you got set up? And they'll say this and that. And Santa Muerte will come up, and I'll say, well, how do you have it set up? And they got it mixed with all this other stuff. And I'll tell them, I'll say, try to keep her separate. Set up her own space. That's how she is. She wants her own space for herself. And then people will go ahead and do that. And then they find a lot of those things that they were complaining about or were sensing were issues, basically was the spirit communicating with them, getting their attention. Like, look, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And this is why I say educating yourself with working with these spirits is very important, because I found people don't take time to know themselves first through shadow work and address aspects of themselves that they need to understand, good and bad. And as I said, the good stuff is easy. That's not the complicated stuff. Whatever gifts and spiritual strengths you have, that's easy. You just write them down, put them on that list. You can strengthen those. That's the easy part. We're not worried about that. But a lot of those shortcomings, failures, faults, and issues, that's what you got to work on first. And once you get those things in order, I'm not talking about, there's never going to be a time you're going to get up and everything is perfect in your life. That just does not exist. It's not a reality. But you should have things in their perspective, context, and they should be flowing in harmony. When it's going like that, then you're able to have control over these things. And you're able to really start to accelerate and evolve on your spiritual path. Okay? Now, you will find out that I find, and again, this is more so newer people. Well, sometimes it's not just newer people. It could be seasoned practitioners. They make the mistake of going into all this dark, intense, heavy work without doing shadow work. And I find that to be a very serious issue, a very serious mistake. Because if you're dealing with psychological and mental and emotional trauma with things that's going on in your life, in your past, and this is what I do in a shadow work reading, it brings all that stuff up. And sometimes it's not a very pleasant reading. It's very emotional for some people. I've watched people break down in tears and cry in these readings, grown men. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying, look, as a grown man, I broke down and cried in work I've done when I've come to the realization of some very intense emotional stuff. Doesn't make you less than a man or a woman. I think it makes you more of a man or a woman if you can face those emotional or psychological issues. And it's not wrong with shedding a tear, getting it out, but then after that, it's time to move forward and go to work. But I find people jump into all this intense, dark spiritual work, and they got a lot of mental, emotional, and psychological issues that they're not addressing. Doesn't mean you ain't going to get results, like I've said many times before here and there, but I guarantee you, you ain't going to be consistent at what you do. So I always recommend to people that they really stay consistent on their shadow work. And those that are on my Patreon page and those that are on or in the mentorship program, the Red Magus mentorship program, you know that's the foundational pillars, which is shadow work, demonic integration work, and connecting and working with your spiritual ancestors and your bloodline ancestors. Those are the pillars. Those are the foundations. And if you have those in line, everything proceeds and flows from that point. Now, Santa Muerte is a very unique spirit because she has multiple aspects, right? I find when the practitioner understands the various different colors and what they represent and the reasoning for those colors and the main seven, though there's more, they branch into other colors that subdivisions of those other colors. But I'm going to keep it to the main seven and that everything that proceeds from out of there, right? If you understand and master the main seven and you bring them together, that's really understanding and being able to absorb her most powerful form, which is the black aspect, right? I find as a practitioner, when you work with Santa Muerte, if you individually aspect that particular color that deals with a certain aspect, right? I find that this is very important where you can break down your work individually. So for an example, the white aspect, you can design ritual work, meditations to connect with healing, right? You can purity, examining the conscious, clearing your thoughts. Anything that evolves around spiritual growth and purification, which can connect also to mental, emotional, and physical healing, is great with the white aspect for yourself and for others, right? You can connect with the violet aspect or the purple aspect, as some call, right? That's if you want to really master and understand the mysteries of magic, witchcraft, sorcery, higher states of spirituality. That aspect can be used to charge spiritual talismans, right? That aspect can be used to enhance your divination skills, your psychometry, your telepathy, your intuition, all of those things. That's to connect and help and assist with serious growth of your spirituality, right? You can connect with the green aspect, and I've talked about this many times off and on over the years. If you're dealing with not just law legal matters, but any type of business, legal, or contractual matters. But yes, a lot of people work with the green aspect if they're dealing with issues with the law, criminal cases, civil suits, lawsuits. But you can also connect with the green aspect if you're working business, contracts, finances too, to an extent, right? The gold aspect, which is, I consider, as they call her, Lady Dorada, the golden lady. I consider that the most powerful for me. That's my personal spiritual mother. And the gold aspect, contrary to belief, yes, it is strongly centered around finances, but that's not it. Don't get it twisted. But I can say financially, I've opened many doors with working with the gold aspect for myself and in my life. And I probably have received many blessings from connecting with the spirit on a financial level. But it's so much more. It deals with overall health and prosperity, right? It deals with opening all paths of your life. And really one thing that the gold aspect can really do for you, which is a beautiful thing, is create harmony on all levels in your life, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially. That's the way I've connected with the gold aspect. And it's very important to have that harmony in those 5 areas in your life, right? The red aspect can be used for more materialistic things in relation for protection, right? But also can be used for sex magic, because Nina Roja, the Red Lady of Passion, there is work that can be designed, through sex magic and relationships and rituals and things of that nature. That's a very passionate and intense path of the Holy Death. The blue aspect too is another form of healing, but it's also, I find it's a great path to work with reconciliation between family, friends, keeping peace and harmony in the home. I know some have found very powerful, beneficial effects of just doing blue candle magic with the blue aspect of the Holy Death. I'm just throwing some examples out there quick. I'm saying the well-rounded practitioner in understanding Santa Muerte understands all of her aspects. Now, I know some people gravitate specifically to one. That's cool. But I can tell you, if you really understand what encompasses that spirit in its totality, you will find that there's so much more when you really understand it as a whole. And I've established a regular weekly practice 1 or 2 times a week with connecting with all those aspects, which something else we talked about in the conference over this past weekend, or really 4 days, more than a weekend, Thursday to Sunday, being consistent, right? Real simple, okay? Being consistent is probably another issue where people struggle with, right? And usually what's linked in to not being consistent is the #1 complaint that I hear all the time: I don't have the time. Well, I hate to say this to you. Guess what? Join the club called life. You and a million other people, millions of other people across the world, it's the day and time we live in. I understand everybody has different lifestyles, whether working multiple jobs, running a business, a career, whatever it may be, raising children in a family. I'm in all those boats. But that's no excuse. You have to find the time. And as I've said many times before, managing your time is magic in itself. Most people will find they're not very productive in managing their time. And that's the only way you're going to get things done. It's up to you to find a way to design a system that's going to work for you. Because again, everybody's, I get it, has crazy schedules, but how much longer are you going to use the excuse, I just don't have the time? And guess what? You just won't get the results. You'll get minimal results for the minimal amount of time you put in. And as I said before, this is work. This is no snap your finger and everything is fixed. I've said that a million times before. Anybody that tells you they got a methodology that you don't have to do anything, it's a hustle. There's a catch to it. Okay? Straight catch to it. So we need to understand that. And if it was that easy, we wouldn't even all be on here right now. Okay? If it was that simple, snap, crackle, pop, snap your fingers, boom, poof, puff the magic dragon, Harry Potter, wave a wand, and all your problems are fixed, we wouldn't even be here right now. Everybody would be doing that shit. And we'd have all the answers to everything. This is the reality. We're on the path, and our goal and journey as we go through this, travel this path, is we're trying to figure this all out. Okay? We're trying to figure it all out. And everybody is going to slightly have a different path that they take. It's not going to be the same for everybody. The journey ain't going to be the same for everybody. Yes, we're all trying to obtain the same goal, self-mastery, to become the best that we can be on all levels, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, no doubt. But is the journey going to be exactly identical? Absolutely not. We've all come from different backgrounds, different experiences. Our perceptions are going to vary from degree to degree based on our understanding of what we've been exposed to and what we've been indoctrinated with. And that's why I said earlier, there's no such thing as 100% pure, undiluted truth. Truth is personal, okay? And truth only becomes a reality when you raise yourself up to the realization of it. That's when it becomes truth. So what might be one person's truth may not be the next person's truth, and that's okay. That just means they're at different levels of perceiving and understanding, and that's just what life is about. And religions try to suppress that by telling you, here's the rule book, aka the Bible, the Quran, or whatever you want, and here's the rules and regulations, the do's and don'ts. Let me keep you inside that box so you don't intelligently think for yourself. And if I can control your thoughts, your emotions, I can use tactics such as fear and all these other forms to keep you controlled. That's how it works. Okay. But when you say to yourself, no, I'm not going that route. I'm taking full control of my spiritual sovereignty by making my own choices, my own decisions. Nobody's going to tell me what I can and cannot do. And I don't give two shits if they agree with it or like it, because it's not their journey, it's your journey. So one thing you must definitely get prepared for on this path, if you're seriously going to make the intent to work this path consistently and make that commitment, you must not give two shits about what people think. And I stopped that years ago. I don't give two flying shits. I don't care if somebody agrees with what I say or don't. That's personal. It's their choice. They're entitled to that. All I give a shit about is that I get results from the work I do. You don't have to agree with it or not. That's some personal shit you got to come to grips with. So it doesn't matter. You can't worry about people being critical or trying to say or do things because they don't agree with what you say or do. And that's fine. They're entitled to that. It's their right. But it's also our right to say we don't give two flying shits, right? We don't care because only thing I need to validate what I'm doing is the results I'm getting from my work. So as long as I keep seeing that, that's all I care. Now, the moment I don't see things, that's when I make adjustments and changes. Because if you've been a Christian for years, and I know many of them that just go week to week, go to their church service, do the same repetitive, boring shit, because they almost feel psychologically compulsed to do it because it's something that they were indoctrinated with. And it's the same thing over and over. It's the same redundant. And through, like I said, repetition could be a good thing and a bad thing. We can reprogram the subconscious mind through repetition, but the subconscious mind can also be programmed against us through repetition. And religion does that. They use repetition on a consistent basis, okay? And that's how they get you in that mindset of complacency. Do what you're told. I've literally sat down and talked with people and asked them, and I get this answer, and it's funny, but I get it. I ask people, well, why are you still, you're Jehovah Witness, you're Christian. And sometimes I get the answer, they're those things because their parents were, and it just doesn't resonate with me. I get that, okay? But what if you watched your father beat up your mother and your mom was very physically abused by your father? As a woman, would you have to get with a woman because that's how you were raised? That's what you were exposed to? It's not an excuse. The cycle changes when you make the intent to break that cycle. That's how change comes about, people. So your genealogy, your bloodline will stay indoctrinated till somebody in that bloodline decides, no more of this. It's essentially what a lot of us did. See, my children didn't come up through that system of indoctrination. So they had a gift that myself and most of us didn't have. Though, yes, they're still exposed in the world. They still see it to a certain degree. They see the indoctrination of society, the education system, religion. Don't get me wrong. You're going to be exposed to it to a certain degree. Can't avoid it. It's the society we live in. But did they go through that full programming that we went through? A lot of us that came up Christian, Muslim, or whatever the fuck we came up. No, they avoided that. How? Because we broke the cycle. And we made the decision to say, we're going to teach our children correctly. We're not going to teach them this bullshit. And I can reflect back when my oldest son, who just turned 29 years old, I remember being called down to his elementary school in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade, where they wanted to, I never forget this, and it's fucked up to show you how quick, when they can't handle something, they wanted to put him on Ritalin because they said he had ADH. And I said, well, what are you basing that on? My son doesn't have ADH. They were basing it on when the holidays came around, for an example, and religion. Well, one, he didn't want to participate in school prayer. Now remember, back at that time, it wasn't like it is now. They had that type of stuff. So he refused to participate. And the thing was, you can send a child to, say, a Catholic school or a religious school, but you're not, if you make it clear to the administration, you're sending them there for the education, which was made clear, you're not obligated to participate in the religious stuff. I remember going to Catholic school for 8 years, and there were several kids I can remember that didn't attend the church or the mass, and they didn't participate in a lot of the religious stuff because that's not why they were there. They might have been put in that school because it is a better education, and there is more focus, smaller classes, and there's more focus on the students, whereas sometimes in these big cities with these big public schools, the classes are overcrowded, and there's not that focus on individual time with the students. Well, long story short, my son was at that time, and I think he was about 8, maybe 9 years old. He refused to participate in the prayer. He was telling the kids that Santa Claus was a myth, right? This is all stuff he learned as a kid, but still had fun with Santa Claus, but said, look, this is what it is. It's a myth. This is an 8, 9-year-old kid. And made some comments about the mythology of God in the Bible. And because of that, they wanted to put him on Ritalin. Call me down there. And I found this kind of funny because I told these motherfuckers, I ain't paying you to teach my son religion. I'm paying you to educate my son with the basic state requirements that he needs to go from grade to grade. Okay? But that's where the cycle is broken. Because see, when they see a young child that's not indoctrinated and programmed and has that understanding, okay, what you have to understand is that's a major threat to them because they're seeing somebody at a very early age that you can't program. So that's where our job comes in. So if you want the cycle to be changed, you must be the one that initiates breaking that cycle. Okay? So that's how change comes about. That's how you make a difference. And that's why it's up to us. If you are somebody that has children, you have the ability to do that. Because now we're producing a generation that's going to come after that's not going to have to be affected by it, say, per se, we were. And let me tell you this, the psychological effects of this, I don't care. And I said this many times before. All right, I want to be clear on this shit. You can come on this path at a very young age, which just means you have a little bit less of indoctrination to deprogram. But it's tougher when you come on this path at a later or an older age, especially, let's say, you transition into this from Christianity, right? That mental indoctrination does not go away overnight, people. It takes a lot of work, especially shadow work, to find out how it's affecting you and how you need to go about changing that. People think it disappears overnight, and it doesn't. It's work. So you must also establish that, okay? And you might find yourselves through periods here and there, consciously and unconsciously, reverting back to some of your old ways. And you may not realize in your approach, in your practice, and how you do things. Even though you might be labeling it with the occult, but this is why I've said over the last several years, I'm seeing a lot of shit on the internet being called occult or left-hand path. And it's layered in fluffy bullshit, astrology and new age bullshit and Wicca, and they're calling it a cult, and it's not a cult. And let's not call it a cult. Let's call it for what it is. And it doesn't mean we don't use some of those practices to a degree, because the purpose of this path is having the harmony of light and dark energy. That's what makes up a well-rounded Black adept or magician, okay? Being able to draw upon both of those in a personal, harmonious level, that's personal for you. But we have to keep it real. There's a lot of bullshit out there being called the occult, left-hand path, and it ain't nothing but new age fluff, okay? We still got people saying Alafia and talking about their occult. Shit kills me, man. You know? And I'm not talking about the ones that may be saying it on a personal level, because it could take on different meanings. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a lot of these platforms where people are mixing Ifa and trying to convince people that Ifa is a cult. And then they're going back into some fluffy bunny bullshit with Wicca, Mother Goddess, and Earth, and and all that. That's great. But I'm going to tell you this. You're going to find out you can damage yourself more if you are what I call a fence straddler. What's a fence straddler? Somebody who straddles the fence. Or I call it the hokey pokey. You got your left foot in and your right foot out. You do the hokey pokey. We have a lot of hokey pokey motherfuckers on this path. Okay? Who want to dabble, stick their foot in the occult and do the hokey pokey. And then when they get scared or fear or they're insecure and they need something to make them feel safe, they go back to being Ifa and Santeria and Buddhist and Kemetic, and it's because they hit that bump in the road where it activated some insecurity or fear in them. It's not how this works. You can't straddle the fence on this path because you will be called to answer. Answer what? Well, you have that moment where you hit that fork in the road where you're going to have to make a serious choice or decision. And I keep telling people to make a full commitment to this path is to be willing to leave all those old ways behind that are disruptive to you. And not everybody can do it. They think they can. They say, oh, no problem. I'm past it. I'm past Christianity and the Bible. But then you listen to them talk and you listen to their questions. You watch their approach and the things they say, and you say, damn, they still are psychologically affected by Christianity. Just because, look, just because you make a claim that you're something, your actions, as they say, actions speak louder than words, right? That's a term we've always heard as young children. Your actions must speak it, right? Not just your words. So if you're saying one thing with words, but then I see you in your intent and your approach and the things you're doing are totally in opposition to that, then I got to say, all right, there's an issue there. This person, maybe they're not doing shadow work. Maybe there's certain things they're not addressing. And that's okay. That's what this path is about. It's okay. It doesn't make you less of a person. It just means maybe you're not focused on the things you need to focus on. That's all. And maybe you need to reevaluate the process of your approach. What is it you're doing? What can you change? Am I in the right direction, focused on the right things? And this is where I said what I said earlier in the beginning of the video. This is why sometimes people make the huge mistake of confusing needs with wants. All right. So it's very important we evaluate and address all of this. Okay. And that we're able to see these things and bring about that change. All right. So what I'm going to do now, I'll take some of your questions and comments to the best of my ability. All right. Obviously, time permitting, because this was a last minute thing as usual. I don't plan these YouTube sessions anymore. I just go with the flow. If I got some time, I pop on. It's just what I do. So let me see if I can go through some of these questions. All right, so shout out to Kenneth MC, Tamika Hill. What's going on? As I said at the beginning, Tamika Myv. They were at the conference this past weekend. It was good to see you guys. And hopefully, well, Myv is local. Tamika came from Delaware. I put little videos up, little clips so you can see. We had people come again from different areas. We had people from Minnesota, Delaware. We had Rachel, who was a sister that drove from Detroit. I couldn't do it, but she drove from Detroit. We had people from Atlanta there, I think Houston, Texas, New York. We had some locals there. I think I said Minnesota, right? I don't know if I said Minnesota. And Brother Will, shout out to Brother Will from Minnesota, who is the second time he's been down here, him and Leslie. Shout out to Leslie too, who was the one that took the pictures that I posted on the Instagram, by the way. So shout out to them, really good peeps. Shout out to Trina, Sister Trina, who they're all part of the same group called the Oracle Group. They came through and represented, and all of them great people. Brother Will, who like myself is a drummer, and Will's an amazing drummer. And some wonderful things happened at that ritual on Saturday night. So we've decided next year for the ritual out on the beach, we're going to have Brother Will put something together, and we're going to get together and do something with that, because I think that he's got a phenomenal gift with that, and we want to expound on that. So yeah, we have people come from all over. So shout out again. I know I said it in the beginning. I know there's more people on that that may not have been on earlier. So for all those that came in person and traveled from all those different places, appreciate you guys coming. We're looking forward to a bigger and better one next year. And we did have several people that attended online, for those who tuned in online for the workshops and the classes. Shout out to you guys for coming through and supporting online. And again, as I said in the beginning, I don't record any of this event. And I explained why. It's a personal thing. It's special. It's special in the sense that each individual has their own personal experience. And I believe some things should be kept sacred, as they call in the bony cage, which is your heart, right? And this is one of those events. So this is why every year it's an event you just need to be there or participate in to have that experience, okay? So shout out to all those people that came through. Ado A, peace. Greetings to everybody else. Mississippi in the building. T. Wells for president. What's going on? I think Justin Pollack earlier, you had a comment earlier about the formation of the 7 Hermetic principles. I believe that was based on your comment, was due to the seasons I was talking about, I'm sure. Yes, the word Christo or Christos, right, means anointed, right? And that's all it means. And the funny thing about it is Christ wasn't the only one anointed or labeled the Christos. King David was labeled the Christos. He was anointed with oil. There were other prophets that were anointed and given the title Christos. And this is why, like I say, the term where it comes, when you read it in the Bible, it's also used in the Greek and amongst the Roman gods when they did anointing ceremonies. So again, because of a lack of understanding and research, we'll find that the title Christ that we know in English, which comes from that word Christos, was not limited to this character we know as Jesus in the Bible. So that's a good point. All right. I got to see, somebody brought that. I keep, because it's just hard for me to get time to watch a lot of these Netflix shows, but I heard about that show, Midnight Mass. I got to spend some time, take a look at it. All right. Tokyo Juan, if I'm saying it right, 5450. Yeah, he made a comment, or he or she, I don't know if it's a he or she, made a comment that they have their own Santa Muerte oil. She got her own stuff, her own space. Yes. Again, in my opinion, that's the best route to go. I'm going to just be real with you. I'm not saying it's the tell-all be-all. There's no written rule. Again, as I said before, you can do whatever you want. That's your personal choice. I'm just giving a suggestion and advice. I think if she is one of the spirits you work with, you're going to find it to be more productive and efficient to keep her altar by itself. It could be in the same room with other stuff. I'm saying keep her altar separate. Do not put anything else on her altar. Only put things on her altar in relationship and connection to working with her. You will find you will get better results. And I'm going to say well over 95% of people are going to tell you the same thing. Okay. I'm not saying there's nobody out there that say, well, I do this and I do that. And that makes it, well, power to you, knock yourself out. But I'm going to tell you the wide scale range of people will tell you the opposite. So yes. All right, what else we got? Kenneth MCs, what do you think of doing work for others on your personal altars? All right, if you're doing work for others, that should be on your black magic altar, okay? If you're doing spells, if you're doing destructive work, healing rituals, cleansing rituals, etc., it should be wherever your working black magic altar is, where you do rituals, that's where that work should be done. I don't recommend you do it unless you've created, like, let's say maybe you're doing work with a specific spirit, right? Unless you've created an altar just for that working, in regards to that. Yes, it can be done on your personal altar, but I would also recommend, though, you should do a form of cleansing on that altar, smudging it afterwards. It could be as simple as sprinkling sea salt with a mixture of Florida water or sandalo, smudging it with a good resin, could be sage, could be frankincense and myrrh. I like to sprinkle or the floor also with that cleansing. Some people like to sweep around the surface because you do want to take the residue of the energy that's left behind from that work. All right, because usually if you're doing work for somebody else at your personal altar, I would assume more than likely you are contacting your personal connection with your spirits to do that work. So that's what makes it okay to do that. That's fine. But just make sure you're taking the necessary steps to do the basics, the cleansing, the replenishing, things of that nature. So it's perfectly okay to do that. All right, what else we got? All right, Adam says, Baniti, is it possible to make the lust ring that we talked about with just your own energy instead of using deities or spirits? And if so, would it be just as effective? Well, that's all going to depend on how strong is your personal power. You'd have to, if you got a strong connection, yes. Any magician, including myself, or occultist, if you don't want to use the term magician, I know if I decided, I know my connections with certain demons and spirits that deal with lust. It'd be very easy for me, just excuse my French, but I'll keep it real. If I just wanted to create a lust ring for pussy only, that's not a problem for me because I know my connection with my spirits and energy and how effective and consistent and how I'm connected to it. So yes, most definitely can be done. The effectiveness obviously is going to be based on how strong is your connection and power with those spirits. So if you feel like you have a confident, powerful connection based on your experience and results in working with these spirits, that most definitely can be done. Okay. Well, you say the reason why you were asking this is because I'm not sure if I really want to link the spirit into the object, and that's fine. But you would have to if you're not linking a particular spirit that deals with that into the object, you would really be doing in that case what we call on this path connecting your personal daemon or your true higher self to that talisman, and that can be done too. So yes, it can be done. But again, the effectiveness is how well connected, because if you're going to just use yourself, then you're projecting your consciousness into that object. How powerful is your consciousness and your perception of the spirit world? And when I say the spirit world, the subjective realm and the objective realm, because when you're doing magic like that, you're taking something from the subjective, because that's what working a ritual like this is about. And you're saying you have the power and the ability to bring it into the objective. The question is, what is your understanding on how to do that? That's all. So yes, it can be done. Stuart Henney asked, do you see Santa Muerte as an ancient Aztec Mayan goddess? Most definitely. I connect more with that aspect because to me, that's the root and the foundation. Now, as we look more modern day practices that we see, there's a lot of Catholicism influenced in a lot of the books, because as we know, where it's become popular here in the United States, via Mexico is how it got grafted into Catholicism in Mexico. Now, you will find a lot of indigenous Aztecs and Mayans who understand her origin or where she really comes from as the Aztec and Mayan goddess of the underworld. A lot of them are very insulted by how she's been infused in Catholicism. That's something that no different than people who practice Ifa, who call it Santeria today, infused the worship of Catholic saints and synchronized it with their orishis or their African gods and goddesses, because they were in slavery, right? Portuguese slave masters during that slave trade who enslaved a lot of these indigenous Africans and forced Catholicism on them. This is where they decided to mask the veneration of their deities behind Catholic saints. So that's how Santa Barbara, because of the red and the sword, that's how she gets affiliated with Shango, Our Lady of Caridad del Cobra, right? That's how she gets affiliated with Oshun. Different aspects of the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's how that gets synchronized with the Yemaya, etc. The list goes on and on and on. Well, they've kind of done the same thing with that, unfortunately, with Santa Muerte, which is obviously the Spanish term for saint of death, right? We know her as the Aztec and Mayan goddess of the underworld because that's where her origin comes from, right? And when you study with the Aztec Mayan goddess of the underworld, or the skinny girl who died at a very young age, and it said in their text that she would breastfeed her children, pay attention to what it represents, in the underworld through her breast, but she would feed them blood because blood represents the life, it's symbolic. She would give them the nourishment that the person would need to make that transition into the spirit world. Well, I'm just giving you a quick gist. There's a lot more to it, trust me. Well, this gets filtered down where they came up with this almost skeleton version, Reaper of Death version, almost a Blessed Virgin Mary kind of version, where it got so infused with Catholicism to the point where the Catholic Church came out a few years back and spoke out against the veneration of Santa Muerte as devil worship. But we see it's a fast growing movement, and it hasn't stopped at all. Because if you go to places, certain places, it could be New Mexico, it could be Mexico itself, and even places, there's a whole cult of the Holy Death that goes to a whole nother level. In Central America, you will see a lot of open practices with Santa Muerte. It hasn't slowed it down. Actually, it's one of the fastest growing movements in spirituality in the last 20 years. It's growing. And the Day of the Dead now has almost become like, and her association with it has almost become like a mainstream thing. So the Catholic Church's stance and movement on it did absolutely nothing. Okay. I myself, and I'm only speaking for myself, and I don't knock anybody that does, I don't work with any of the Catholicism aspect of the Holy Death, Santa Muerte. I've always referred to a good neutral book, which I've mentioned many times, is a book that Tracy Rowlett wrote called Santa Muerte. Even though she had a Catholic upbringing, she comes from a very neutral approach. To me, it's a good book for practitioners to develop their own personal connection with Santa Muerte. So I don't do any work where it incorporates Catholic prayers such as the Our Father or the Hail Mary. I don't do any of that stuff. That's my choice. I develop my own invocations, my own workings. I'll give the spirit offerings. I have sigils that have came to me in my communications with Santa Muerte. I have a whole invoking ritual where I cast a circle to invoke all 7 of her. I've created my own practices in my understanding and connection with the spirit. None of them are related to Catholicism. Even my own Holy Death Rosary that I perform, and I hate to even use the word rosary because it links you in with Catholicism. It's no different than using ritual beads and a mantra. It's all centered around my own practices and approach. And it's a very non-traditional mainstream approach. I don't connect with any Catholicism or religious aspect of it. I've even been able to take books that do come from that perspective where you can get a lot of good concepts and ideas, but you can just change the words and the concepts around by removing the religion and infuse your own stuff in there. So that's where your creative ability comes in. But I definitely, that's the foundation and the root that I do acknowledge her as the Aztec / Mayan goddess of the underworld. Okay. Justin Pollock says, you can make a astrological talisman without a specific gene or spirit tied to it. Yes. And again, that's going to come on how strong you can enforce your personal will. So, yes. All right. Eagle Light says, I don't know what that was in reference to. Must have missed something. It's a simple question. No, Eagle, please, we're all grown here. Maybe it was a comment or something. Not sure if you, let me see, make sure I didn't miss a question. I don't see anything up here. It might have been a comment. I'm sorry. Maybe it was something you were commenting on and I don't see any previous questions. So I'm not sure if you're still in here. Just to get clarity. Maybe there was a question. Maybe it didn't get in the chat. So maybe there's something. Yeah. Adam says, I think all astrological talismans must have spirits attached to them. That's a little tricky, not really, because your personal astrological. This is where, again, when I was explaining earlier, your personal daemon or your higher self, really in essence, is your most powerful aspect. But again, how well connected through your perception of understanding and having the ability to force your will on a situation, can you infuse that talisman with, is the question. So it's a little tricky. There's some gray areas there. All right. Justin Pollock says, yes, Santa Muerte, that is her title as the Mayan Aztec goddess of the underworld, which is not an easy pronunciation. Mik Talan Echahuti. Everybody pronounces it different. But yes, matter of fact, the book I just mentioned a few minutes ago that I've mentioned many times over the last few years in these YouTube videos, Tracy Rollins has a nice section in there breaking all that down. And one reason why I really like her book is she gives you the indigenous history and origin of Santa Muerte. She will take you up into modern day and give you obviously the infusion later after the fact of how the Mexican culture via Catholicism influenced what we see today. But the beauty of it is I like her approach in working rituals, approaching the spirit, breaking down the aspects. She doesn't incorporate any of the Catholicism and the religion. And she makes it clear her background, even though she was raised Catholic and gave it up at a very young age. She makes that clear that herself has no interest in connecting with that aspect of it. And I find I have many books on Santa Muerte. I find that's my go-to. That's my favorite. And actually, you probably can't see here. Probably won't be able to see it. But in my office here, I keep a little shrine to the gold aspect, small aspect of the 7 color. And I keep that book right next to it just as a go-to reference sometimes if I need it. For whatever, offerings, just to refresh on some of the different aspects. But I find that to be a very foundational book in addition to others. Okay. And again, I want to give a shout out to Kiona out of California, who was able to get me the gold statue that I recently put on my altar a few weeks back. It's a beautiful statue. I can't even describe the connection immediately. And that's now the centerpiece of my altar. And she was able to make that happen. So shout out to her. She's fortunate where she's located in out there in Cali on the West Coast. She's near a temple of Santa Muerte that has connected to it a store where you have, which is nice, you have the ability to get all different type of implements, be it statues, tools, and things of that nature. So yeah, that's a blessing. We have similar stuff here, but probably not on that level. There is some stuff here, but again, shout out to her for getting that. She was able to ship that to me from Cali and take care of that, and I appreciate that. So shout out. What else we got? Justin Pollock says the interplanetary realms charge the astral plane in a Eurocentric model. The Arabs cracked the code to open the book. Pick a tricks in the 900s, but I think Africa and Americas hold the answer. Again, what you're doing breaking down there is, like I'm saying, if you have the understanding and the power and the know-how of connecting it, then it can be effective. And there's different methods that you can do that. It can be done both ways. It can be done where a spirit is connected or placed into the amulet or the talisman. And it can be done the other way. But again, I think the thing we need to focus on, if you're doing it this way we're talking about, the effectiveness and the power is going to be based on what type of power you have in your understanding of infusing it with that. Because that plays an important part. And if you're weak, I'm going to be honest with you, if you don't have that understanding and you are weak, it's not going to be as effective. Okay. But yes, good points. What else we got? So Kiana says she works her altars daily. Now that black snoot or soot come out of my nose from the incense and candles. Yeah, one thing you should do, without getting spooky though, And this kind of brings me, you shift me to something else, Keona, not just what you're saying. Yeah, I get you. But now it reminds me of something else. You should know how to read your candles on your altar. A lot of people, and I've done classes on that. When your candles are burning down and when they're finished, you should be able to study them and read them. And I've talked a little, about this over the years. If your candles are burning down clean, whatever you're burning them for, that's a telltale sign it should be working. You should see that results in your life. If you're getting a lot of dark black residue and you're seeing it really dark, it's working, but it also means it's working hard, but it also means you need to stay at it. That's a sign you need to stay at it. And I just recently had a candle with that I did with Santa Muerte. I had one when you get a lot of that cloudiness, not the dark black smoke. You might get a lot of residue and cloudiness on the glass. That's usually the spirit telling you there's still some blockages there. It's working, but you might have to focus on specific things in relation to what you were working that ritual for. So you should be able to, because remember the flame, the fire element, is a powerful tool of scrying, right? You can use all four elements: fire, you can use water, you can use air, right? You can use all the elements, earth, as a form of scrying and communicating, as a system of divination and connecting with spirit. But because fire through candles and candle magic we use very regularly on this path, that's something definitely you should develop the tool of being able to read your candles, right? Because they say a lot, all right? So I just want to put that out there. All right, what else we got? Justin Pollock says algebra, alchemy, alcohol, that's the magic, spirits are the essence. Now it's funny because I always joke about this, but ask anybody that knows to get a liquor license for a bar, it's called a gin license, right? And they call alcohol spirits, right? Because there is a connection to mathematics, alchemy, which is personal transformation, alcohol. So keep that in mind. One of the terms that's used for alcohols is called, you want those spirits, right? Because there's ether in alcohol, right? And in ether, which is the gases or the energy state I was talking about that we all emerge from, spirits come in an ether or gaseous form first, right? This is what we mean when we say the spirits are energy, right? They take on an energy form first before you ever experience or see, and some never do, and it's a very small percentage, see a physical manifestation of the spirit. Because you too will take on that ether form. The very spirits that you're trying to connect to and invoke, you become that spirit. You become one that becomes invoked as you make the transition. So there's a science in that. Yep. Jayla Dainty. Yeah, there's a lot. I could throw some authors out there. Conjure Man Ali has a couple of books. He's very neutral in his approach. He would probably be my second recommendation behind Tracy Rowland. Now there's another guy. He's neutral, but I got to be honest with you. He changes invocations because he almost does them in a rhyme thing, and it's a little annoying to me. He's neutral in his approach. He encountered and developed his relationship with Santa Muerte while he was serving in the military, and he considers himself an atheist. Which is very interesting, but he's become a very devoted practitioner to the spirit. Arnold Bustillo is another one. Last name I think is Bustillo. And then there's another one. She's incorporated some ritual stuff, some Catholic stuff in her rituals, which I've omitted. Her first name is Sophia. I can't think of her last name. She has 3 volumes of Santa Muerte Grimoire. I think it's volume 1, 2, and 3. And then I can give you another title. That's a really good book. There's some really good rituals in there. I would omit, again, the Catholicism stuff. If that's not your thing, you can adjust it. The Santa Muerte Gnostic Bible. I would encourage people to take a look at that. But those are some of the ones I can think of offhand. Okay. All right, what else we got? We have lost a spider goddess in the Caribbean called Cacata in the Taino Arawakan diasporic language. It's funny because, and I know a little bit, very little, I don't know a lot about that, but Arachne, the spider goddess that we work with on the left-hand path, the occult, draconian magic, and the clip-hop is very similar. It's funny because, well, it's not funny. I don't know why people say that term. It's funny. What's so fucking funny, right? I find it interesting. That's the term I'm looking for. Arachne, the spider goddess, and Kenneth Grant is probably the only one. He was probably one of the influential people that introduced Arachne, the spider goddess, into the occult, and a lot of people use his work in regards to Arachne. She's a powerful spirit that really connects the void and the abyss, and you really connect with that spirit on this path. She can be worked with intense forms of shadow work, unlocking the hidden gnosis of the individual, uncovering and revealing to the individual the inner depths or the deep aspects of their subconscious mind, good and bad. So what I'm saying, she can be used for an intense aspect of shadow work, and we do work with the spider goddess in that form. Now, again, in my minimum recollection of what you're talking about, Justin, which I don't have a lot of knowledge on that, I'm not sure how you guys connect with Kakata. I read a little bit about it, so I'm not sure if it's similar, but we do. Yeah, Neith too, right? Yeah, we do connect with it on that level. But you're going to find with different cultures, there's cross-reference to a lot of these spirits. They just gave them different names based on their language and their culture. And you can see this over time through history with different cultures, in holy books, grimoires, ancient texts, whatever you want to call it. And this is why people can look at certain systems and go, oh, that spirit looks very, or acts or functions very similar to this spirit in that culture. Most definitely that exists. All right. All right. So Transformational Beauty Butterfly says, very long name. Astrology is science, right? I mean, yes, spiritual science. Yes. Is it science in general? It depends on what perspective we're looking at, astrology. But some can take astrology and water it down, and it becomes very religious and dogma. Now, when we're sticking to the basic understandings or the fundamental information on the astrological, the planets, the movement, planetary hours, etc., yes, that's just foundational science. But I want to make this clear. I've said this many times before, okay? I want to make this very clear. Some people are guilty of using astrology almost as a religion. It's not the tell-all, be-all. It doesn't mean you're a victim to the circumstances of what maybe your natal chart, dictates, or you got some people who are so spooky when it's Mars in retrograde, Saturn and this, and retrograde and all that. You're not a powerful magician if you feel like those forces control you where you don't control them. I'm not saying there's not influential energy in astrology. People misinterpret this when I say this. I'm not saying you. I'm just speaking in general. But what I have found out is how we use astrology on this path is helpful information to understand ourselves. So I don't ever look at my astrological or my natal chart and go, oh, I can't do this because the moon or Mars is in retrograde. Like they'll tell you in astrology, working in Scorpio, when the moon is waning is a bad time to do ritual work. Well, I can tell you that's not true, because Scorpio to us on this path is a very chaotic sign and very chaotic energy. For chaos magicians, it's a very powerful time to do work, different types of work, right? Where they're saying that's a bad time to draw things to you because the moon is waning and Scorpio is chaotic, which is true. But it depends on your understanding of what chaotic energy is and how you connect and work with it. And I can only speak for myself. I found that to be false. You can work with the moon waning in Scorpio and the planetary hours according to what people would say in basic astrology is not conducive for change. I find that not to be true. Because what I'm trying to say, essentially at the end of the day, the vessel and the power source that brings about the change is you. You can't be a god or goddess and say that there are planetary and astrological influences that you're inferior to. I'm not saying it doesn't tell you a lot about your nature. I'm not telling you it doesn't tell you a lot about your character and your personality and all those things. Yes, but I don't design work. That doesn't dictate to me what I should and should not do. I'm going to do it straight up. And the results speak for themselves. But yes, it is a science, right? I didn't mean to go into that long explanation, but that's my point. Now, Wiccan doesn't interest me. I know Jayla made a comment. Wiccan's just earth magic. And so we do work with earth magic to a degree. Like for an example, one of the Goetias or Lords of Darkness, Dicarabia. There's many Goetias that are connected to crystals, stones, herbs, nature, earth magic. We do use it. What I'm saying is we just don't exclusively do that and block everything else out. See, what we do on this path, combine the understanding of lighter and darker energies. That's what a good magician or adept does. So we do work. It's not, but you're right. It doesn't interest me as an exclusive path. We're not going to be forming circles and putting on Viking hats and dancing around and calling the ancient earth god and then dressing up as Diana in a funny looking hat. And in that sense, no, that doesn't interest me at all. Actually, it's kind of a little corny to me, but I don't knock anybody that does. Don't take it personal if you practice Wicca. I don't fuck with that. I agree. It's me. I always get this question. Hold on. Jumped. Give me 1 second. It jumped. Okay, I always get this question. What do you think of Bobby Hemet? And I'm only going to speak for myself. It's not really so much what I think of Bobby Hemet, but since it's a personal question, what do I think of Bobby Hemet? I will make that clear. I have respect for Bobby Hemet as a teacher. He was an occultist to a degree. The only problem I have, not with Bobby Hemet, the people that are now, as you know, Bobby Hemet obviously has stepped back from the scene. He's been dealing with illness for several years, so he's low key. So I'm going to say things in a respectful manner because Bobby Hemet's not in a position, obviously, to speak for himself, right? But there are a lot of people, not Bobby Hemet, but there are a lot of people that walk around saying Bobby Hemet is left-hand path. He's not left-hand path. Okay, I want to make that clear. What I think about him is he's obviously he taught a lot of good stuff. Obviously I respect him as an elder and a teacher. But I do think he was one of the elders, obviously, that have laid the path with many other elders to get us where we're at now. But I think now we're accelerating to beyond. That information definitely serves a purpose and always will. But the only problem I have with people that follow Bobby Hemet are the ones that say he's left-hand path. He's not. You can't find me nowhere where he said he was. He does talk about a cult. And he might touch on some left-hand path topics, but he's not left-hand path. And what I've found, whether it's Bobby Hemet, I found in the last several years, 8, 9, 10 years, there's a lot of infusion with New Age stuff, Wiccan, African traditional spirituality, the occult, and it's all been put into one ball. And there are a lot of people who mix all of those and then call themselves left-hand path, or not. They may not, others do. And I think that's a problem, because I only say it's a problem because I think there needs to be a distinct differentiation, because a lot of those people that are claiming to be left-hand path in the cult, they don't work really with the Qliphoth, the demons, the void, the abyss, Lilith, Lucifer, Samael. I'm not talking about, they may talk about it, but see the difference of what I do per se, and I can only speak for myself. I don't just do this, right? What I mean by that is I don't just put out 4, 5, 6 YouTube videos a week and just spit all this knowledge, right? And it's talk. The reason why you don't see me on here all the time is because we're doing work. See, what ritual work and what body of work is designed about all the information you're teaching? And all I see, I'm not saying everybody, I'm sure there's plenty of good people out there doing things. I just want to make that clear. If it's just talk, it's just talk. There's got to be a body of work to support, because all that knowledge that we can gain through teachers, lecturers, and books, if we can't apply that knowledge, it's pointless. It's just knowledge, it's just book, it's information we got stored up here. The difference of what I do is I try to show people how to apply the work, okay? So if you are trying to apply the work, you're putting it into practice. Okay. And that's what that's what this is about. So I respect Bobby Hemet, and I consider him one of the many elders that laid some of the foundational steps on this path. Okay. All right, let me see if I can get through a few more of these before I wrap it up. All right. Justin Pollock says, I think spirits are like us. We have agency to do good or bad. I agree. Yeah, the hokey pokey, man. We got a lot of fence straddlers on this path. They do the hokey pokey. They want to be occult and left-hand path when it's convenient for them. And that's why I call them the fence straddlers. They do the hokey pokey. And you're going to damage yourself taking that approach on this path. On this path, you're either all in or you're not in at all. I'm just going to be honest with you. See, I said many times before, you could fake the funk on many other paths. So you could put on, all your Ifa stuff and your beads and say Alafia and all that stuff, and nobody would even know. You can put on your big ass Egyptian Ankh, your dashiki, and say Hotep, and nobody would even know. Say, hey man, he or she looks the part. They look like, I always get a kick out of this. That brother, I said, that brother looks conscious. That sister looks spiritually conscious. So you're more trapped in what they look like. I've seen people just like me with a t-shirt and a baseball cap on know more information and knowledge and more in line than somebody that's all geared out. They got the dashiki on, the big fro and the big pendants, and see, that's deceiving. You understand? So yeah, you got to be careful with that. You definitely need to be careful with that, because you can't fake the funk on this path, because you will face a moment, as I mentioned earlier, a while back, you will face the moment where you'll have to attest and answer. And if you can't rise up to the challenge, either get swallowed up, and most people run back to doing what they used to do. I've watched people come on this path hardcore, so about how intense they are, how they're so occult, left-hand path and dark. And then something happens in their work with a moment of fear. It unlocks psychological traumas and insecurities, and it scares their ass right back into the church. And usually when they go back 10 times harder than they were the first time around. That's called, they hit that emotional bump in the road. You gotta be careful. All right, what else we got? Yeah, you're right. Jay the Dainty says, people that still haven't changed their approach, when I was talking about that earlier, they say that they refer to an external God. And they say, I've heard people who claim to be conscious. I've said this a few times over the years. I've listened to people talk in the Kemetic conscious arena, if that's what you want to call it. I literally heard people refer to Osiris or Ra as the Most High. Literally. And I've actually called people out on the moment, and I asked a question. I would say, excuse me, what do you mean when you say that Amun-Ra is the Most High? Because to me, immediately what comes to mind is Allah or the biblical or the Quranic God. And immediately it sends a red flag in my mind that this person obviously came from that and is not realizing it, but they're still using that concept to conceptualize what their concept of God is. That's a good point that you bring up, Jayla. That's a good point. And I remember one specific brother I had asked this, and I said, so when you say the Most High, do you mean like Allah? In that fashion? What do you mean? No, I don't mean it like that. I mean it like the highest of the high. I said, now you I'm sorry. I said, now you're confusing me even more. That's even more religious to me. No, I don't mean it in a religious way. I'm just saying to focus on like the highest of all deities. I said, listen to what you're doing, bro. Now you're trying to reason out in your mind. It is what it is. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that's a telltale sign. Psychologically, there's some shadow work to do there, because you can't use the term Most High and not tell me on a subconscious level, meaning you're not aware that you're still heavily influenced by monotheism. That's a monotheistic term, okay? Nobody on this path will refer to any God as the Most High. okay? But themselves. That's a whole nother story. Okay, so that's a telltale sign of maybe somebody who's dealing with psychological residue from, say, Christianity. But you're going to run into that all the time. And that's what I mean when I say they might have left an old way of spirituality, whatever it was, and they don't realize there's certain things subconsciously that they're carrying over with them into this so-called new way. And that's where shadow work comes in. But yeah. All right, what else we got? Kev, what's going on? Yeah, shout out to brother Kevin, who came through on Saturday and did his presentation of Kematria. I forgot about that presentation. We did that on Saturday, which was very interesting. I think I had Kevin, excuse me, on one show here, but yeah, you definitely, Kev tries to come through and update that presentation on a yearly basis. Good stuff. So shout out to Kev. That's my brother from another mother. All right, and then what else we got here? There's some tips on how to do more effective shadow work, techniques for spirits to work with. Yeah, shadow work, man. Listen, a book I would suggest you get. To me, the best way to start before you start really indulging and working with spirits. There's a book I've mentioned multiple times over the last several years. It's Alchemy for Personal Transformation, The Emerald Tablets of Tahuti. And the author's name is Dennis, first name, middle name is William, and the last name is Huck, H-A-U-C-K, H-A-U-C-K. The 7 operations of alchemy, understanding that to me is a system I've designed, and I show my students in the mentorship program when it gets to shadow work to start there. If you understand the 7 operations of alchemy, you can literally work on each individual aspect that you need to correct about yourself using that concept. I mean, it goes a little deeper. But I would start with using alchemy, and I like to call it dark alchemy, as a form of foundational shadow work. After that, you can branch out with working with any road clearing archetype of spirit. It could be Kali, it could be Set, Azazel, it could be Samael is a great spirit to work with, or demon to work with shadow work. But they can be very intense, and the level of power of transformation and change can be overwhelming if the practitioner is not prepared for it. And we talked about that at the conference over the weekend a little bit. So I think understanding the foundational aspects of alchemy is a good place to start with your shadow work. But look for that book. I think if you read that book, it'll push you in the right direction and then help you in design work with specific spirits and demons. Okay. Darren Burr, what's going on? Shout out to the UK in the building. Appreciate you tuning in if you're still here, brother. Someone said to me that libations and altars will evaporate. Doesn't mean spirit is drink it or their presence. That upset me because the liquor's going down means presence to me. Yeah, I've heard that, Kiona. Now, when you're pouring out libations, or sometimes you'll see in certain practices where you might see the person doing the ritual might be, as we say, blessing. They might be taking rum and blessing and spraying rum on the altar. All of it really is connected to an aspect or a gesture of honoring the spirit. Okay, but when you talk about that libations on altars will evaporate, and it doesn't mean spirit is drink. It doesn't mean the spirit is drinking or their presence. I don't know if that's entirely true, because when you're making that gesture to the spirit, you have to look at this more on a subjective level. Don't look at it, because there are some people that will say shit like with food offerings of say apples or bananas, and all the bananas and apples are rotten, the spirit's eating them. No, it's a natural process for them to decompose. Now, even with liquor, when the liquor evaporates and goes down, even if, like, for an example, Santa Muerte, right? This is how you got to use your you have to use your own intuition, and you have to be able to decipher and understand. So what I mean is, obviously, if you put a liquid offering on the altar, say tequila for Santa Muerte, obviously over time, the temperature, the basic science is going to make it evaporate. But here's how you know where the spirit is actually on an etheric level partaking of it, when it's going down really quick, right? That's the way to decipher. And you know on an etheric and a spiritual level that spirit is in taking some of that offering, right? I'm not talking about, because obviously over time, the natural process of life is going to set in, whether it's decaying of food or the evaporation of liquid. But I know, for an example, when I bring up the Santa Muerte and the tequila offerings, I know sometimes that tequila is gone in a matter of maybe a couple days. Whereas I know some people can keep it on there for over a week and it might just go down a half, a quarter. So the spirit will let you know, and you have to be able to tap into your intuition to understand when you're getting the communication where the natural cycle of life is kicking in. So, yeah. All right, so Thomas Correa says, how do you feel about those who use Christianity to connect with energies from another system such as Santeria and the 21 divisions? I actually like the 21 divisions. And I actually, back in the early 2000s, I have some good people of mine in Providence, Rhode Island. And one of my close friends' mother runs a 21 divisions botanica. She works with San Miguel and Aisa. If you're familiar with, with that, people in 21 divisions know what I'm talking about. I like 21 divisions because whether it's Puerto Rican Sanse or whether it's Voodoo Hoodoo, you're not restricted, say, as Ifa or Santeria. Like I know in this aspect of the 21 divisions, not all, but this aspect, like they didn't do any blood sacrifice. There are some aspects in 21 divisions where they don't do any type of blood or animal sacrifice, and this was one of them. I've sat in and participated in when she would bring the spirit down of San Miguel to mount her, and if you've ever been to one of those things, it's a whole process that happens after that. But some refer to it also as Dominican voodoo, right? I think there's a lot of good practices in there, but obviously all of them, whether you're talking about 21 divisions, whether you're talking about Puerto Rican Sanse, Voodoo, even if it's Haitian Voodoo, and Santeria, they all have been influenced to a degree from Catholicism / Christianity. Now, I've said many times before, I still work, and I've got a whole series of classes ongoing now and a tier on Patreon that deals with this. I have the African Witchcraft and Sorcery tier on Patreon, which students who sign up for that, we just deal strictly with that. And I have a series of ongoing classes on Patreon also outside of the tier, which we're getting ready to do the class number 4, which is going to take place on the 13th, Wednesday night. And I show people how you can still work with those minus all the tradition and restriction, which the mainstream traditional practitioner is going to tell you, you can't do that. It's against tradition. I don't give a shit. Having been initiated in those systems, and you don't have to be, you can still effectively work with them without having to be confined to all that religious dogma and tradition. And it's no different than how we connect with and work with Klepothic deities, how we work with the Goetia / Lords of Darkness, etc. It's no different. It's just the mainstream traditionalist will tell you that because he or she is going to lose serious dough. Because if they tell you, no, you need to do it like this or that, you got to do this ritual and that, and you got to do this initiation and that, well, thousands of dollars later in the hole, that's the reason why they're telling you that. So, yes, I think there's a lot of good things in 21 divisions from, again, personally having experience with it. Like Candelo, I still work with Candelo. Candelo is a very powerful Congo / African spirit that is, utilized a lot in the 21 divisions. And then you might have seen this image of Candelo in books, or you might see it in Botanicas. He's sitting like with his legs folded and he has a pipe in his mouth. We call him Papa Candelo, right? So I think there's a lot of powerful spirits that you can connect with In the upcoming class we have on the 13th, we're talking about a lot of that stuff now. We're dealing with Kimbanda, which I think is a great path that connects, or African spiritual path that connects a lot of the cult and left-hand path. So I show people how to work with it from that perspective, removing all of that tradition. Again, the mainstream is going to tell you, you can't do that. That's not the right way. Well, again, my only rebuttal to that is I can, because I'm getting results. You say I can't because you are a priest or a priestess in the tradition. And of course you're going to say that because that's what you do. And I got no problem with it, but you need to not have a problem with what I'm saying. You ain't got to agree with it, but you need to not have a problem with it. Now, in the books on Ifa, and is there a difference between Ifa and Santeria? Big difference between Ifa and Santeria. All right. You got to remember, Santeria is the infusion of Catholicism / Christianity with the synchronization of Ifa. So in Ifa, you're not going to see, in real Ifa that comes from Nigeria, Dahomey, Ila Ife, you're not going to see the infusion of Catholicism in real Ifa practices. Same thing like with the Babalawos, right? When you deal with most Babalawos, unless they come from a Santeria house, there could be that influence there. But for an example, the difference, Santeria is the merging of worshiping and connecting with all the Orishis simultaneously. Obviously, as I said earlier, which came via the slave trade from the Portuguese slave masters, and they hid their worship of the saints or the Orishi behind Catholic saints. So in America is where it became a popular practice to infuse the worship of all these Orishi. Whereas in Ifa, if you go over to Nigeria, when the Babalawo sees who rules the head and the body, and whoever rules the head, you basically work with and serve that Orishi your entire life. So you would stay in the cult of Oshun or the cult of Obatala, where not that you weren't exposed to a degree to the other Orishi, but you focused on that one that ruled your head. Here, it's a little different. So you're seeing a lesser or watered down version of the traditional Ifa system, which that's what Santeria is. And it's the worship of the saints, as they call it in Latin. So you're seeing an infusion of Afro-Caribbean religions, Catholicism, and traditional African spirituality. Whereas Ifa just stays rooted in the African principles and African spirituality. That's the major difference. There is a big difference. There's a connection. They are connected, but they are very different in nature. We need to understand that. All right. Thomas Correa says, do they do this in the Caribbean aspects of Spiritism or Spiritismo, right? Well, you're going to find in the Caribbean, and whether you're Jamaica, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, in houses of Santeria, Spiritism is used regularly. And most people were influenced by a person named Allan Kardec, right? Allan Kardec was a French spiritualist who has a heavy influence for mediums who we call white tabletop mediums. And you will find, like, for an example, my godmother, who initiated me in Santeria, we would have what we would call regular misas, weekly and bi-weekly. And when you have regular misas, if you ever belonged or were initiated or belonged to a Santeria house, you would set up a altar, the white cloth would go on it, it'd be white flowers, offerings. My godmother, who was also initiated in Palo, would have herbs at the altar for cleaning people, and all the chairs would be placed in a circle. It would start from the altar around a circle. The mediums would sit at the altar. And Allan Kardec's book, A Collection of Prayers, that you can get in any Botanica, is used as a format and sequence to open the body in there, to run a misa, and to close a misa. And a lot of things would be used in there. There'd be drumming, there'd be some Christian prayers, but yes, it's all connected. And that whole white tabletop seance or spiritual medium is used in a Spiritism to have a misa in a Santeria house. And that's the unique thing you got to understand about Santeria. You're seeing an incorporation of a Spiritism, which is a good point, forgot about that. Traditional African ancestral veneration. You're seeing some of these strong practices of Kimbisa. You're seeing Palo Mayembe, Palo Monte, which is an infusion, really a watered down version of Palo Mayembe, right? And you're seeing Ifa and Catholicism. It's a very vast and infused spiritual path. All that's in Santeria that I just said. So we would have these white tabletop mesas on a regular basis. And then we do the opening, and then individuals would be pulled into the center of the circle. Like the spirit came through. You know, we would sit up there with my godmother, some of us who were trained as mediums. She would sit on one side of the altar, and she would call me, Michael, she would call me by my regular name. We would come up, we sit. And whatever we would detect in the spirit communicating to us, we would, and we didn't know nothing about these people. We would just say, you come sit in the middle. And that person would sit in the middle on the chair, and we'd go to work on it. Just whatever the spirit was communicating. I mean, I've had people sit down there who were told they were thinking of committing suicide. I've had dudes sit down in the middle there who were told their dick doesn't get up no more, and they almost fell out the chair, that they were struggling. That's the type of shit that comes up. So spiritism and spiritual medium is a very powerful tool when developed, and that's utilized. And Alan Kardec, especially in the Caribbean and Santeria and Ifa, his methodology is used very heavy. It has a strong influence in the houses of Santeria, in Cuban houses, Puerto Rican houses, you name it. It's very influential. So most definitely. All right. Yes, genetics do, as Justin says, affects the epigenetics to whatever it is that every culture calls magic. Because yes, there's different levels of perception on what magic is. If you go over to Europe, Celtic magic, etc., there's that. If you go over to Native American, there's shaman or shamanic magic, right? You can go over to Africa, African spirituality and traditions, that they have their aspect of witchcraft / magic, sorcery, etc. And then Western occultism is really an infusion of all of those things. Because when you look at Western occultism, or what we're calling left-hand path here in the West, we basically are infusing all of those things, because we work with all of that. Because remember, we came after the fact. When I say we, a lot of practitioners here in the West, and we kind of pull from all of those things. So that's a good point. Very good point. Eagle Light says, you are a real practitioner. Fuck with you, heavy. Thank you for your wisdom, brother. Well, I appreciate that. I have an ascension altar. I have all the gods of death and chaos as one of the fallen. I'm here to ascend. Okay, so you connect with that path. Nah, well, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate that. All right. DBO, what books do you recommend? I think I threw some out there already. I don't know if you're talking about any specific ones for specific things, but not sure. I did throw some out there. Eagle Light says, in my time to ascend is coming soon. Samael guides me. My mother Lilith guides me. We just did something powerful over this weekend with Samael and Lilith, being at the epicenter of it. When you're doing any type of klepothic ritual and understanding the klepoth and how they are the facilitators and everything facilitates out from them to the void and the abyss, some good stuff. I'm not sure. Hold on. Adam says, hold on. Benini, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm really asking is if you create a talisman for me or hire using your own astral energy, would it be just as effective as the spirits you prescribed? I think I described that already. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. I already answered that. I think so. You got to understand it. This is what I always say to people: if you're asking a question, and now by listening to the way you're wording it, if you already have an answer in your mind that you're looking to hear, then it's going to come off as if your question wasn't answered. I understood what you were saying, and I think I answered it, but I think you didn't understand what I was explaining. Okay. And I went through the differences and the pros and cons. Now, maybe that came up after I answered the question. I don't know. But I think you need to go back and listen. And I explained the difference. And I explained if the spirit was put in the talisman, if I was doing the energy, or if you were doing the energy yourself. I clearly went through that. Again, maybe that came up. Maybe I just didn't get to it because I've been doing on here for a while. I'm not sure, but I think I already addressed that. Yes, Keona, I do. Man, let me tell you something, man. I know I mentioned it a couple of times. The statue is off the chain. And man, that was the missing. It's funny because how that came about when I was doing some work with Keona, and she told me about the place. I told her, I said, send some pictures to me. And so she said, yeah, no problem. I'm gonna be down there. I'm gonna take some shots for you. So she took several different photos. She sent them to me. And as soon as I opened the photos, I didn't see nothing else. I saw but I blocked out everything else. And that particular one caught my attention, and everything else just was a blur. So I reached out to her and I told her, yeah, that's the one I want. And she went and got it for me. She didn't have to do that. And yes, it was the central foundational piece that was missing, because I wanted to have something larger and bigger. And maybe I'll post a picture of it when I get around to it. I wanted something to be I wanted the gold aspect to be the centerpiece in the altar, bigger than everything else, and everything else structured and built around that. And it was what I was missing. And I could feel the presence. The crazy thing, and again, not to sound spooky, because I ain't spooky, but you really look close, it's almost like when I'm sitting there looking at it, you can see the detail in the eyes, but the eyes literally, when I'm working with it meditated, it literally moves. I could see it blinking. And it's subjective, so I'm not passing it on. I don't want you to go, oh shit, that's deep. But you get what I'm saying. It's personal. But it's almost like the power and the energy now connected to the altar is even more lively than it was. So it's good stuff. Good stuff. But again, appreciate you sending that. All right. What else we got? Pablo de Santiago. We are the Israelites. The Bible speaks of. Get out of that mess. Okay, we're not even going to entertain that nonsense. It's a total waste of time. All right, what else we got? Okay, we'll keep working on the fire. It's so hard that it goes past the top, even when the wax is down. Good stuff. All right, what else we got? That's me. Okay, we'll skip that one. All right, Stephen Nunez says, would you consider Allegra and Set similar, both ripped out of mother and or tricksters? I've mentioned many times before, I don't really like that term tricksters. I know what you mean. See, they're not tricksters in the sense that they're trying to deceive you. They tend to put challenges and obstacles in your path to bring out the divinity in you if you can overcome them. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant. But let's just say for this sake, I'm not saying you meant it like that. But in that sense, yes, Set and Allegra are very similar, because Set will make order out of your personal chaos, which obviously you'll have to face and deal with your obstacles and challenges. And Allegra basically does the same thing. He makes you clear your paths and addresses whatever you need to work on to get those pathways and roadways open. So yeah, there's a synchronization and similarity in that sense, no doubt. Now, when you read the story of Set as he ripped himself, and what does this symbolically mean? As he ripped himself from the womb of his mother, Nut, because he couldn't wait to be birthed, it represents, again, what we represent on this path. Isolated consciousness of Set, or isolation. Individuality, in the sense that we take ownership and rulership of our spiritual sovereignty. It's what it would mean to say that you are a god or a goddess. And that doesn't mean, see, people that are stupid and ignorant hear that, and they usually don't understand what that means, because they're thinking when we say the word god or goddess, that we're coming from a religious perspective. A god or goddess just is simply somebody that takes control and is responsible for their actions. That's all. It means you have taken the liberty to make decisions for yourself, and you take responsibility for your actions, be they successes or failures. And basically, Set was taking that rulership of divinity, and that's what that story represents. So there are connections there in a nutshell, in a quick nutshell, because I don't have much more time. But yes, there's definitely a connection there. That's a good point. Arctic Norton says, Arachne is pretty intense. Yes, and she'll be testing you good. Yeah, Arachne is a great archetype to work with when you're doing shadow work. Very intense. Okay. All right, what else we got here? Eagle Eye says, people are slaves to their damn natal charts. Yeah, I don't get into all that. Again, astrology is a great tool to help you understand about your nature, your personality, your characteristics. I got no problem with that. But when you're using it as like a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew with a Bible or a Quran, it's the tell all be all, and you're under that inferiority complex of it, that can become a religious and a dangerous thing. All right. Shout out to Goddess Isis. She was here this past weekend too at the conference. And she described, we did a Leviathan ritual on the beach on Saturday night. She describes it, point from my bloodline, the final purge of sorrow. And that's a good point. Sorrow and despair before the liberation from past traumas. Nestled in, and the ritual is connected to Tiamat too. So as she says, nestled in the womb of the great mother brought me homeostasis, right? And that's a good thing. And we did a ritual on Saturday where part of the ritual was bathing in the chaotic waters of Nun, or the great mother Tiamat, where she's the one that emerges out of Leviathan, right? And when you know the story of Tiamat and Leviathan, we took it back to the foundational roots and principles of primordial chaos, where all things emerge, right? All things emerge from the primordial chaotic waters. So yeah, everything over the weekend was themed on, you know, addressing yourself, obviously, working on things you need to fix, focusing on what you failed on in this past year, and what are your goals moving forward to better yourself for 2022. So good stuff. All right. Jayla Dainty, yeah, reference to this. I know this comment was in reference to Wicca. Yeah, it is earth magic in essence, and it is a love and light stuff with religious motifs. It is that too. And again, you're gonna find, depending on somebody who calls themselves a Wiccan/witch, if they practice that, I found the variation of it can vary to different degrees. There'll be some that are very heavy in the nature side of the magic. There'll be some who incorporate a lot of the religious light stuff. But yeah, it's a conglomeration of all that. Goddess Isis says, my chamber room as well as my being has a newfound revitalized energy. The residual effects still as potent as the energy we co-created. Much gratitude. No doubt. And that's why I told you, the work we did here and the work you do in general has lasting effects. So that's good. Good stuff. All right, what else we got? Yeah, Ahriman, Susie Rodriguez says, Ahriman came to me in a dream years ago and I wasn't ready, but I've been yearning to connect with him again. Yeah, we're going to be dealing, and we are dealing with him, and we started, but we're going to really be going into him in the second Eastern occult mysticism class. Ahriman's a powerful mask of the adversary. And that's what I meant earlier when I said sometimes you can jump right into intense work and underestimate the intensity of the change and the power that the spirit brings. So it's good that you recognize that, because that was step one, you know. But yeah, definitely. Mandela Bourne, what's going on, brother? Yeah, I've had a good session. You know, you sent your wife to me, and we're going to have a follow-up. And I know you traveled, you're over there in Ethiopia, be safe. But glad to see you tuning in from Ethiopia. Where are we going? Let me see what else I can get to real quick. I only got time for maybe one or two more. I got to wrap this up. Let me see if there's any questions. Yeah, good to see you too, brother JR. I'll skip some of these. This is just comments. Okay, just yeah. So St. Michael and Miguel, yeah, Miguel. So okay, yeah. I mean, their power. Now that aspect of it, I want to be clear. Don't think it's the same type of St. Michael you might be familiar with. To those that see that comment, I don't want you to think it's the same type of St. Michael in Catholicism, because San Miguel or St. Michael can be synchronized with this aspect in 21 divisions, and also in Voodoo. He can be, you know, affiliated with Dambelo We Do, because they got a name. So you got to understand the system, because they're synchronized with different energies. But that's a very powerful aspect of San Miguel. He can be very, very warrior and intense-like. Okay. All right, we skip some of the comments you guys having a bunch amongst yourself. All right, looks like we are at the bottom. That's about as much as I could get to today. So I think we're going to wrap it up right there. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. I tried to get to most of your questions, but my time is done. Don't forget, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. I would recommend you guys definitely checking out Tier 3. That gives you access to all the classes and the rituals for $25 a month. And you don't have to sign up for any of the individual classes. The individual classes are available individually. They're $56 per class. All right. So you can find information how to sign up on Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos on Facebook. Information is here in the community section of the YouTube page. Those classes can be paid by Cashapp or PayPal, but your better value obviously is becoming a Tier 3 Patreon member, because then you don't have to worry about signing up for any individual classes. You'll have access to them. Anybody that emails me and asks me about classes, I just give them the link to the Patreon. That's the way I've set it up. It's the best way. Yeah, the Cash App Eagle Light is capital BANITI9. Capital BANITI9 is the Cash App. Again, it's posted in the description box of the videos if you forget anybody. And also on all the platforms where there's classes and things put up. You can access all that information. All right. So I would definitely encourage people to definitely check that out. Patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. Don't forget the Primordial Chaos podcast. I'll try to get some new material up this week now that I'm slowly but surely getting back to normal. You can find the Primordial Chaos podcast on most podcast platforms, Spotify, Radio Public, Apple, Amazon, Google. It's pretty much just type it in, you'll find it. I put links up on all the platform pages. I think I'm up to about 12 or 13 episodes on there. I try to put one up a week. It's fairly new. I designed that along the lines of, matter of fact, when Tamika was here, she told me how she listens to it. And that's kind of what was the method behind designing. Like she said, she'll be cooking and have it in her earbuds. And that's kind of why I did it. You might be in the gym, exercising, walking, out and about in your car. So I just figured it was another good vessel to use to put some information out there, because not everybody sometimes can sit down and watch the YouTube, and or the YouTube can be a little annoying in your ears because you got some you got to keep the screen on, or you get commercials. So I put together these little 30, 40 minute or so more podcasts where it's shit you can listen to on the go. So check out the podcast, support the podcast. Got the classes on the 13th. We got, the 10th and the 13th, and then we have the ritual on the 29th. December, we will take a break from Thanksgiving to New Year's. I take a break. I shut down. Only thing I really do in between is work with clients on the side with readings and consultations. I will be putting out in the next couple of weeks. I will be starting in the next week or two the yearly forecast readings that I do up until about February 1st. So if you're interested in a yearly forecast reading, it gives you a forecast for your entire year 2022. That'll be going up soon. Other than that, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you for joining, and be back whenever that next time is. I couldn't tell you. Infernal blessings to all, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.